"Where's the ATM card?" "Let me handle it," Donald said to me as I lay in my hospital bed, battling cancer. He had a triumphant smirk on his face, clearly plotting something sinister now that he had the card. "Just so you know, there's $500,000 in there. Handle it well," I told him. It wasn't just because we were married and I trusted him. I had a plan, a thorough scheme to bring Donald down. When I returned home to grab a few things, I found a divorce application on the table. As expected, the ATM card was gone. Operation successful. To anyone else, it would seem like a hopeless situation, but this was just the beginning of my revenge. I'm Emily, a housewife in my 40s, living with my husband Donald. Initially, our marriage was problem-free, but now our relationship has completely soured. The main reason? Donald's true nature. Donald was deceptive, pretending to be a kind and caring husband for the first 2 months of our marriage. However, after those 2 months, he showed his true colors. He believed that a wife should always prioritize her husband, underpinning his terrible personality. I was constantly subjected to his harsh words. A wife is supposed to be subordinate to her husband. You should always listen to what your husband says. That was Donald's mantra. If I ever failed to fulfill his whims, he would hurl cruel words at me regularly. "Aren't you capable of listening to your husband? You're a failure as a wife." For instance, he insisted on washing his clothes first, then mine, despite it being more economical to wash everything together. Donald stubbornly refused. "Don't you dare wash my clothes with yours. What if they start to smell like yours?" As if my laundry was somehow foul. His attitude extended to cleaning as well. His room always had to be cleaned first and kept spotless. If a single speck of dust was found, he would demand, "There's dust in my room. Clean it now," ordering me to vacuum and mop. When it came to meals, if I served something Donald disliked, he absolutely wouldn't eat it. It would have been manageable if it was just about knowing his likes and dislikes, but Donald was capricious. Even his favorite dishes were rejected if he wasn't in the mood. A wife's job is to always serve what her husband wants to eat. Failing that, you're not fit to be a wife. That was Donald's reasoning, but it was unreasonable. Yes, I am Donald's wife, but that doesn't make me omniscient or capable of reading his mind. If he didn't want to eat something because he wasn't in the mood, he could have just told me beforehand what he wanted. But Donald never did that, making it even harder to cater to his whims. I was honestly fed up with his childlike tantrums. It was unbearable, and I knew I couldn't possibly fulfill all his whims. However, each time I made a mistake, the atmosphere at home worsened, and our relationship deteriorated. So I couldn't completely ignore his demands either. Such a forced lifestyle was bound to take its toll eventually. While doing household chores, I lost consciousness. It seems I made a loud noise when I collapsed, and a concerned neighbor contacted the building manager, who found me and called an ambulance. Taken to the hospital and regaining consciousness, I was immediately admitted for tests. My wishful thinking, "I hope they don't find anything wrong," was shattered. I had developed cancer. Whether it was due to the illness or not, I experienced dizziness severe enough that I couldn't stand. A nurse supported me as I had to sit down suddenly. The doctor then advised contacting family members. I called my parents home, of course, but I had lost Mom a few years ago, and Dad was in a state requiring care, living with my brother and his wife in a place 3 hours away by plane, making it impossible for them to come quickly. I contacted Donald but only got his voicemail. I left a message, but he didn't even read it. He had turned off notifications for messages from me, so he would likely notice it quite late. I could have gone myself, but the doctor advised against it, so I gave up on that idea. A few hours later, Donald finally contacted me. "I'll come to the hospital tomorrow. Wait for me." That was the entirety of his brief message, no concern for my condition. Nothing. I wasn't even sure if he would really bring my belongings. His indifference felt like a weight on my body. First of all, I had explicitly asked Donald to bring my belongings today. I needed a change of clothes and various necessities like toiletries left at home. Despite repeatedly messaging this to Donald, there was no response. After a few hours of distress, Donald finally read the message and bluntly replied, "Shut up and be quiet." Considering I was hospitalized for cancer and this was an emergency, his attitude was shockingly disappointing. Not that I had much hope in Donald to begin with. Ultimately, he didn't come to the hospital that day. I had tried to be realistic, but part of me couldn't let go of hope, making my first day in the hospital even more difficult. The nurses sympathized with me, which only added to my pain. The next day around noon, just as promised, Donald showed up. Seeing me, he casually remarked, "You look healthier than I thought. I expected you to be more frail." His comment was infuriating. "Just put down the bags and leave," I said angrily. Tilting his head, Donald responded, "I didn't bring any bags." What was he here for then? Wasn't he supposed to bring my things? Unable to contain my anger, I glared at him. "What's that look for?" He seemed annoyed by this and glared back. His unreasonable behavior was too much, but I tried to stay calm. "Then why are you here if he didn't bring my things?" "There's no point," I asked in an angry tone. "I had another errand," he replied. Confused, I asked, "Another errand? What is it?" Donald hesitated as if he had something to say. "If you have something to say it now," I pressed him, impatient and sleep-deprived from anxiety. Finally, with a laugh, he said, "Where's the ATM card? Let me manage it. Trust me." Donald had come to find out where the ATM card was to seize our savings for his own use. At his self-centeredness, even in this situation, I couldn't help but sigh deeply. Yet Donald seemed unfazed, smiling as if nothing mattered. I couldn't deal with him anymore, so I decided to act. "There's $500,000, so please take care of it," I said. $500,000, Donald exclaimed in a mix of surprise and delight. For context, Donald was just an ordinary office worker, and so was I before marriage. We never did any job that could earn a fortune. So where did this wealth come from? The answer: stocks. I started investing after becoming a housewife, as suggested by a friend. While juggling household responsibilities, I had recently made a fortune in the stock market. However, I had no intention of spending such a large sum immediately and decided to save it for the future. Ideally, I would have kept the existence of this $500,000 secret, fearing Donald's selfish actions if he knew about it. But now, fueled by a desire for revenge, I needed to trap Donald, who had repeatedly behaved selfishly. Donald was surprised, even flustered, by the higher-than-expected amount. Smiling gently at him, I said, "The ATM card is in the third drawer of the shelf. You'll manage it, right?" Seemingly dumbstruck until now, Donald replied energetically, "Understood." It seemed he had fallen for the trap perfectly. "I'll leave the rest to you," he said, leaving the room briskly. He probably planned to get the ATM card and withdraw the $500,000, unaware of the obvious trap. Donald seemed to believe everything was going according to his plan. But it wasn't that easy. Fortunately, today was a holiday and the bank's counters were closed. With Donald at work tomorrow, he probably wouldn't be able to withdraw the money until the evening. That gave me enough time to execute my revenge plan. After discussing it with my doctor, I was granted permission to leave the hospital for a short time. Tomorrow, my revenge would take place, and I couldn't wait. The next day, as planned, I decided to return home to fetch my belongings. This was merely a pretext to get permission to leave. My real goal lay elsewhere. Despite it being only a day, I missed my home terribly. Donald was at work, so the house was empty. Upon entering, I saw two papers on the living room table: a divorce application and a letter. "Sorry for the rush, but let's get divorced. Please write and submit the divorce application." That was the content of the letter. Out of caution, I checked the shelf and found the ATM card gone, quickly realizing Donald had taken it. Normally, one might feel dismayed at such a large sum of money being stolen, but I remained smiling. Operation successful. I couldn't help but let those words slip out. If Donald had been there, he would have been furious, wondering what I meant. First, I filled out the divorce application, then gathered the essentials I needed for my hospital stay, and left the house I had shared with Donald for so many years. Of course, I submitted the divorce application on my way, severing all ties with him. Back at the hospital, I prepared for the battle ahead, discussing various matters. Later, relaxing in the hospital, I noticed several missed calls on my phone, all from Donald. He had also sent messages asking the same thing: "Tell me how to withdraw the money." It was something along those lines. Noticing that I had read the messages, my phone rang again. Not wanting to disturb my roommate, I moved to the common area where phone calls were permitted and called back. "Emily, finally, I can't withdraw the money. Please tell me how to do it." Donald's voice was more frantic than I imagined. He probably needed the $500,000 immediately for some reason. I felt no obligation to help him. "If you can't withdraw it, just give up." I replied coldly. Don't be so harsh. We were husband and wife after all. Maybe we should help each other out, Donald pleaded. What nonsense. Donald's actions were nothing noble. He was trying to betray me to satisfy his greed, nothing more. There was no way I would respond to Donald's healings. Are you having trouble withdrawing the money? I asked. Yes, I urgently need the $500,000. Please help me, Donald responded. It seemed he was in a situation where he urgently needed the money. Despite having the ATM card for the account holding the $500,000, he couldn't withdraw the funds. Thinking he might be doing something wrong, he contacted me for instructions. As I listened to Donald's explanation, he begged, "Please help me." His voice was weaker than I had ever heard, clearly desperate. The thought of him being so cornered almost made me laugh. I decided to confront Donald with the harsh reality. The method is correct, but the ATM card you have now won't work anymore. What do you mean? Donald's voice rose in disbelief. It's true an ATM card should work, but the one you have is now useless. Why? Because I filed a theft report earlier today. That ATM card is just a piece of paper now. It's useless to you. There was silence on Donald's end, probably in shock. I had stopped by the bank on my way back and reported the card stolen. Donald had taken my ATM card without permission, intending to claim the $500,000 I had earned for himself. His act was clearly theft, and it was only right that I took appropriate measures. The ATM card Donald took could no longer access the $500,000. Moreover, our marriage was over. He couldn't use the excuse of being a spouse. Donald had himself eliminated the means to access the money. How does it feel to be tricked by the woman you look down upon? I don't know what you wanted the $500,000 for, but I'm not foolish enough to hand over such an amount under these circumstances. Stop insulting me. I need the $500,000 right now. Please, I'll do anything. Just give me the money, Donald pleaded. His desperation was evident, but I couldn't think of any reason why he would suddenly need $500,000. Why do you suddenly need $500,000? What have you done? I asked, feeling a sense of ominous unease. Donald began to explain. 2 days ago, learning about the $500,000, Donald quit his job, expecting to get a windfall. He spent a large sum on gambling, racking up a debt of $300,000. The situation was dire, with the lenders demanding repayment within a week. However, Donald thought he could solve everything with the ATM card linked to the $500,000. He continued his lavish spending without worry, but when he went to the bank that evening, he couldn't withdraw the money. Now, without the $500,000, Donald's future was uncertain. Realizing the urgency of his situation, Donald, who had abandoned the divorce papers and stolen the ATM card, shamelessly contacted me like this. Please help me. I don't know what will happen if this continues. Donald's voice was filled with panic, and it seemed there was no lie in his story. His foolishness elicited a deep sigh from me. Donald had done the unthinkable, seduced by the prospect of a large sum of money, recklessly spending $300,000 in just a few days. If the old me who had tolerated his terrible behavior and lived modestly with Donald were here, I might have extended a helping hand. But now I was a different person, with no love left for Donald. No matter how much he begged, I felt no pity, only amusement that he thought I would care. Still, Donald hadn't given up. Please help me. You're the only one I have left, he pleaded. His pleas were unbearably annoying. I wanted to get rid of this nuisance and focus on my treatment. This situation was Donald's own making. If he had shown concern for me as a husband and brought my things the day I asked, I might have shared some of the $500,000 with him, but he chose not to. I'm sorry, but I have no intention of giving you the $500,000 or helping you. It's all your own responsibility. After all this time of not behaving like a husband, it's cowardly to ask for help now just because we're technically still married. I spoke with unyielding harshness. Don't be so cruel. We were married, after all. Our long relationship doesn't just disappear with a divorce paper. Donald tried to appeal to our past relationship. What relationship? You had only been leaning on me. You're making excuses to manipulate the situation in your favor. I don't want to waste another minute on you. I will not give you the $500,000, no matter what you say. Donald became even more desperate. Please, Emily, I'm begging you. You're the only one I can turn to. If you abandon me, I don't know what will happen to me. It was as if he was blaming me for his plight. but it was Donald's fault. If he hadn't recklessly splurged, he wouldn't be facing this future. If Donald hadn't decided to cut me off just because he thought he had access to money, none of this would have happened. Stop making excuses. You're reaping what you sowed. Handle it yourself. Goodbye. With that, I ended the call. I ignored several subsequent calls from Donald and blocked his contact to ensure no further communication. Since the divorce papers were duly submitted, Donald and I were officially strangers now. I embraced my newfound freedom and faced my battle with cancer, which after a long struggle, I finally overcame and was discharged from the hospital. I heard from a friend that Donald's whereabouts have been unknown since then. After losing contact with me, he desperately reached out to his in-laws and friends, trying to borrow money. However, his urgency and the amount needed, $300,000, raised suspicion, and nobody lent him a penny. In other words, he was unable to repay the $300,000 he borrowed. Donald's fate is unknown to me, but he's likely suffering more than if he were in hell. I couldn't help but feel a sense of deep satisfaction. As for me, post-cancer, I moved out of the house I shared with Donald, found a new home, and began working from home, enjoying my independence. Fortunately, my finances are secure. Friends occasionally ask if I'll find new love, but recalling my hellish life with Donald has put me off marriage. I prefer to live freely alone.